In today's talk, I'm going to introduce free cities and why they're relevant to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin and free cities might seem like quite tangential topics, but I'm going to argue that they're more related than you might think. One of the defining aspects of Bitcoin is that it's a decentralized system that gives its users benefits such as uncensorable transactions, increased privacy, and protection from inflation. And that focus on decentralization is what free cities and Bitcoin have in common. Bitcoin is decentralizing power in the realm of money, and free cities are an attempt to decentralize power in the realm of governance. So why do we need more decentralization in governance? Well, we live in a world where almost 8 billion people live in societies controlled by just 200 governments. And most of these governments operate in a pretty similar way. They have turbulent political cycles, meaning the major rules that govern society, the services governments provide and the taxes we pay, can change every few years. They also raise funds via a taxation system that many feel is overly complex and unfair. And they also tend to operate their own inflationary currency. And what's more, people don't seem satisfied with the array of governance options that are available to them. A 2021 poll of 17 developed countries found that the majority of people surveyed believe that their countries are in need of major political reform. And statistics like this suggest to us at the Free Cities Foundation that there's an opportunity for new kinds of governance model to be tried out. And that's what our foundation aims to do. We're working to bring about a world where a larger number of smaller, more nimble jurisdictions called free cities can help people to have more choice in the rules that govern their lives. So in this talk, I'm going to briefly introduce you to this concept of a free city. I'm also going to talk about a special governance model called a free private city. And finally, I'm going to say a bit more about the commonalities between the free cities movement and Bitcoin. So what is a free city? Well, we define a free city as a self-governing territory that upholds individual rights and freedoms. This is a new kind of autonomous jurisdiction that's springing up today and offering people the chance to live in a society where the rules work differently. I'd like to briefly talk you through some of the governance models that are included in this definition of a free city. So behind me we have a rather complicated slide that helps us to illustrate what the different models are. That line you can see running through the middle represents level of autonomy from not very autonomous through to a fully autonomous sovereign entity. So starting on the left of this diagram, we have something called an intentional community, which you can view as the mildest form of a free city. These are residential settlements of like-minded people that are united by a common philosophy, ethos, or political stance. Intentional communities feature at the lower end of this spectrum because they lack any legal autonomy. You can't found a company in an intentional community that's only subject to that community's laws without it being subject to the host state's laws as well. Some examples of intentional communities include Liberstad in Norway and Montelibro in Montenegro, which you can find out more about by visiting our website, free-communities.org. The next up on this chart is special economic zones. These are areas of a country in which the business and trade laws only are different from elsewhere. Shenzhen is an example of a very successful special economic zone, where increases in economic freedom have led to very impressive results. You may have seen the famous image behind me of Shenzhen, which shows how this really underdeveloped part of China was able to move to an affluent modern metropolis within a 40-year period. Next up, we have autonomous regions. These are internal territories of a sovereign state that have a degree of self-governance. These mostly exist for historical reasons, such as to accommodate ethnic minorities or serve remote regions. Some prominent examples include Madeira, the semi-autonomous part of Portugal, and Sark, a crown dependency in the English Channel. Next, we come to special administrative regions. And these are the nearest step you can get within a country before you get to a fully autonomous sovereign entity. These territories typically have their own laws, executive powers, and sometimes even their own currency. It's only foreign policy and national defense that's dealt with by the host nation. The most well-known of special administrative regions are Hong Kong and Macau, but I'd also add Dubai International Financial Center and the Honduran Zones for Employment and Economic Development, ZAs, to this list. If anyone in this audience is looking to spend time in a place that has a freedom-focused ethos and offers a great environment for business and community building, then you may want to check out the Honduran ZAs. A couple of prominent examples are Prospera, which you can see pictured behind me, and Ciudad Morazan. These zones are also the closest thing you can get to the free private cities model that I'm going to speak to in a moment. And finally on this chart, you have sovereign entities. These are fully autonomous states, and on the city level, you only have two examples that exist today. Those are Monaco and Singapore. They are completely independent, and they operate full control over all aspects of their foreign and domestic policy. So I've just talked through the range of models that can be encompassed within the free cities definition. So where do we as a foundation focus our efforts? Well, generally, we don't try to focus on creating new sovereign entities like Monaco and Singapore, because all of the world's territory is already occupied by existing governments. So instead, what we do is focus on what we can practically achieve within the confines of today's world. And for that reason, I want to say a bit more about the free private city model that features in this chart just under the Honduran ZAs. So what is a free private city? A free private city is an autonomous territory within a nation state that's run by a for-profit operating company. This company acts as a government service provider, offering its citizens protection of life, liberty, and property. But beyond these basic functions, the operating company only serves to create a market for people to voluntarily cooperate and provide the services that the community wants. Unlike most modern nation states, free private city operators don't seek to control areas of life like education, transport, and healthcare on behalf of their citizens. Instead, they create an environment where these services are provided by the community on a free and voluntary basis. Free private cities can be established when an operator negotiates a deal with a host nation. The deal is generally that the operator brings high-quality jobs, investments, and talented people in exchange for being granted recognized internal autonomy for 50 to 100 years. And this is roughly what happened in the case of the Honduran ZAs that I mentioned a moment ago. Another defining aspect of the free private city is that there's a citizen's contract. So every citizen has a written service agreement that outlines their rights and obligations, including what they have to pay for their governance services. Individual citizens' contracts can be different, but they'll most likely include some of the terms outlined on the slide behind me. For example, the operator of the city will protect the life, liberty, and property of the citizen. Secondly, the citizen will pay some fixed fees. So there isn't a variable taxation system whereby you have to audit all of your economic activity. You pay for your governance as a service. Thirdly, if there's any kind of dispute about how the service of governance is being provided, then that can be dealt with by an independent third-party arbitrator, so that the citizen and the operator are on an equal legal footing. Fourthly, the citizen is free to leave at any time. So unlike some countries like the US and Germany, there's no exit tax if you want to leave the free private city. And finally, there can be no unilateral changes. The operator can't just turn around and change the terms of living together. So why is this concept of a citizen contract so important? Well, because when there's a real written contract, as opposed to a hypothetical social contract, the operator and the citizen are on much more of an equal footing than is the case with modern governments and their citizens. The operator cannot unilaterally change the rules of the city or increase the fees that the citizen pays. If the operator fails to provide services it promises to the required standard, then they are also legally required to offer compensation. And I'd argue that this model of a free private city represents a way better deal for the citizen. So to illustrate this, I'd like to invite you to imagine for a moment a visit to a dodgy car dealer. Imagine you go to a car dealership and you tell the dealer that you want to buy a car. No problem, the dealer says. But here's the deal. If you buy a car from me, then I get to choose the car's manufacturer, the model, the interior, the color, the engine, and even the price of the car. And what's more, once I've made the offer to you, you have to buy. Well, any of us could see that this is a really bad deal. But when you think about it, this is exactly the deal that most of us get from our governments today. We're not able to choose which services the governments provide us, or to what quality, and what price we have to pay for them in terms of taxes. We're simply told what the rules are, and we have to take it or leave it. If we're unhappy with our local state-run school or hospital, we can't claim back our tax and choose another service. We just have to stick with the terms of the government. So free private cities are an attempt to offer a better alternative to this system based on better incentive structures. The citizen's contract gives both the citizen and the operator a clear understanding of what's required from them and what will be provided by the government so they can actually consent in a meaningful way. So why is this idea of free cities relevant to Bitcoin? Well, to answer that question, I want to share a quote by Buckminster Fuller. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And this is the approach that the Free Cities Foundation is taking in the realm of new jurisdictions. Our strategy is not to try and fight the existing reality by campaigning, lobbying, and protesting in an attempt to influence national governments. Instead, we're building new places based on alternative models of living together, which range from the freedom-focused intentional communities I mentioned to fully autonomous free private cities. And we're allowing people to voluntarily opt in to this system. Which brings me to what we have in common with Bitcoiners. When Satoshi came up with a new concept for money, he also didn't try and change the existing system. He didn't write a policy paper to the IMF or go and protest outside the Federal Reserve until Ben Bernanke incorporated proof of work into the US dollar. Instead, he created Bitcoin as an alternative voluntary system and allowed people to opt in. It's the same approach we're taking in building free cities. So my message to the Bitcoin community today is this. Now's the time to look beyond the realm of money to apply Satoshi's approach of creating new voluntary systems in new areas. In Bitcoin, we now have the freest and most decentralized form of money that's ever existed. But I would argue that the realm of governance is another major untapped area where much more freedom and decentralization is also possible if we apply the same approach. So if the idea of free cities seems appealing to you, then we'd like you to get involved. There are free cities being developed today, such as the Honduran ZAs that I mentioned during this presentation. They're welcoming new residents and businesses, and they'd love to hear from you if you're someone that's mobile and looking to live in a freer location. So to find out more, I invite you to come and speak to us. We've got a booth out there in the exhibition space. We'll be able to provide you with much more information. I'm also excited to share that the Free Cities Foundation is going to be hosting our own conference here in Prague this October called the Liberty in Our Lifetime Conference, because that's what we want to achieve. This event is going to be a fantastic opportunity to hear from people working on free cities projects across the world and connect with like-minded people who are passionate about this idea. So I'd like to thank everyone for listening today. If you want to find out more, you can visit our website, free-cities.org, or follow us on Twitter. Our handle there is FreeCitiesFound. I've been able to give you a brief overview of what Free Cities are today, but I hope it's been enough to pique your interest to come and find out more at our exhibition space. So I look forward to chatting more to you during the next few days, and I want to thank you again for listening. Thank you.